My name's Julianne LaBrush. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the president of the Ottawa Horticultural Society. And for anyone coming for the first time, a newcomer, I'd like to welcome you. We are in for a real treat tonight. Mary Crawford is a master gardener, a friend, someone I've known for a long time. I've heard this talk already, and it's absolutely fabulous. But before we get started with Mary's talk, just a couple of quick announcements. Kathy and Gloria, would you two like to step forward and tell us a little bit about the upcoming plant sale that we're organizing with Friends of the Farm?
Everyone, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name's Kathy Younger-Lewis, and I'm the convener for the, I guess it's the Friends of the Farm Ottawa Hort plant sale. Needs an acronym. And I wanted to alert you that there are sign-up sheets for volunteers at that back table. I know it's gone on for years, so everyone knows a lot more about it than I do, but there are sign-up sheets back there. And also this year, I think last year there may have been a bit of a shocker with the jumping worm. So that this year, Gloria has some amazing ideas as to how to make life a lot easier for people donating plants. So here she is.
Good evening, everyone. So we're hoping for volunteers to help out at preparing the plants. We'll have several different time slots for people to come. And there's 3 reasons why you should. 1, you get to meet all kinds of your fellow gardeners and members of the society. 2, you learn an awful lot about plants. You know about people donate plants that grow well in their gardens, and you'll learn which ones are good in the sun and which ones are good in the shade. And thirdly, it's a lot of fun. What's another reason? That's true. That's true. You still have to pay for them, but you get to look them over before everybody else does, before the hordes come on Mother's Day. So the way we prepare the plants, because of the jumping worms, I've volunteered my garden. And as you can imagine, I'm not too keen on getting jumping worms in the garden. So last year we asked people to dig up their plants, and hopefully we'll have an early spring so you can see your plants, and wash the roots and then put them in soil, either some kind of sterile soil, ProMix, whatever. And then, pot them and bring them in their pots. That was probably a bit more complicated for people. So we're going to have if you can do that, then fine and dandy, no problem. If you can't, I'd ask that you dig up your plant, wash the roots, and hopefully they won't be dead like this one. But anyway, you wash the roots, put them in a plastic bag. And then if you have a pot, if you don't worry about it. We've got plenty. And just bring them over. Please, please, please identify the plant. Mystery plants are difficult to sell. And so if you, all we need to know is what it is, daylily, and what color. That's all you need. And then just drop them off at my place. And that's it. But I would encourage you to donate plants if you can. The more you can give us, the better off it is for us. It's a lot of work to put this together. And if we don't have donations, it really is for naught. So thank you.
So we just will also be having a couple quick announcements about the May plant auction and sale. That's a different sale.
May is a big month for those of us who like shopping for plants. And if you don't find what you're looking for, at the Friends of the Farm plant sale. At the end of the month, OHS has its annual plant sale and auction. So Jennifer Nix and I are going to be your two auctioneers again this year. Maureen Marks has very graciously agreed to stay on selecting those special specimen plants. And if anybody here is growing something special, whether it's a house plant, a tree seedling, something that you've had in your garden for a while that's a named cultivar that you would like to divide, please reach out to me or to Maureen and offer it to our auction. And then, of course, we also have a plant sale. Now, if you're like me, I get to that Friends of the Farm plant sale and I just go a little crazy. And I usually end up with more plants than I can actually put in my garden. Plus, by a couple of weeks after that sale, the things in my garden are starting to come up. And I realize I really need to start thinning things out. So that second plant sale at the end of May is a great opportunity for you to thin things out and bring some more donations into us. And again, precautions against jumping worms. If you want to bring things bare root in a plastic bag of water, the way Gloria showed you, or you want to repot them into Pro Mix. Are we going to do the Pro Mix again this year? We're not going to do that again this year. But most of us have potting soil lying around, so that's a good thing to pot things up in. So just keep in mind, 2 plant sales and an auction, lots of opportunities to donate, lots of opportunities to buy. And the revenue from these 2 sales and the auction is really what supports our society and allows us to bring in wonderful speakers like our speaker tonight.
Hi, everyone. My name is Claire. So it's my pleasure tonight to introduce you to Mary Crawford. So Mary is, in addition to being a traveler and a presenter, she's also a master gardener. She has many skills and passions, but one of them is that it's her interest for the natural world. And as a gardener, she likes to work with nature, and she doesn't try to overcome nature. So you would think that going to New York is so far from nature, but as you will discover in her presentation, nature can be found in and created in the most unexpected places. So I will not tell you more, and I'll let you, Mary, take you on her wonderful trip to the wonderful gardens of the High Line. So welcome, Mary.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Claire. Thank you indeed for that warm welcome and for inviting me here to share this presentation with you. It's really an honor and a delight. I know at least one person already I've spoken to who's been to the High Line. In fact, gave you a presentation on it about a dozen years ago. Anybody else been to the High Line? Oh yeah, okay, so quite a few of you. Be interested to compare notes. If you're like me, and a couple of years ago, I hadn't really heard of the High Line, and it was my sister who had gone to New York the previous year, and she had discovered the High Line and was excitedly telling me all about it. And we decided that we needed to go down there together and take some photographs and see what we could do. So we made this plan to go in September of 2023. And I'm really glad we did. Looking back on refreshing the getting ready for tonight's presentation just helped me remember what a wonderful time I had in that city and what a lot of beautiful people I met down there. So it's been really nice to recall all of that and then to be sharing the High Line with you. So what is the High Line? It is, in fact, many things. So it's a lot of there's a lot of areas into talking about it. The first thing that hit me when we arrived at the south entrance, we walked up
It's like you're walking up into a garden in the sky. Just these steps just take you right up and into it. It's also a well-used path, and not just by tourists, but locals. Locals use it. You can see a woman pushing a baby in a carriage, like getting from point A to point B. It's also, in places, it feels like a forest sanctuary right in the middle of the city. This unexpected surrounding. It is also an experience. This is one of the pieces of art that was there at the time. They keep getting rotated, so you'll never see the same thing twice. But this one was called Old Tree. And I just loved it. It was so intense. It was at the other end of the park. But it's just part of what makes the High Line very special, because it's a celebration of a lot of things: art, architecture, and the plants. So you have this and the views of the city. You have this lovely confluence of things happening. So we'll be looking at a number of things tonight in the High Line, and including kind of looking at how this came about in the first place. How did you go from having whatever was there before to this? And who were the players that made it what it is? What were the historical events? And then we'll take a look at the various garden zones that are there, and talk about design principles that that have made the High Line special. So it's a free public park that was opened in 2009 to 2013. The majority of the park was opened over this period of time. You see the metric version up there, but everybody down there says it's a 1.5 miles long, 30 feet high, and growing in 12 to 18 inches of soil. So as gardeners, you know that is not very much soil at all. There are a lot of different garden zones reflecting different moods, different microclimates throughout the place. About half of the species of plants are native, so about 500. Although this wasn't the case when it first started. That has evolved, kind of just like we've all evolved with native plants. The names of the architects, Diller, Scofido, and Renfro, fantastic, phenomenal achievement as the landscapes, as the architect for the entire thing. Ricardo Scofido, who was really the lead architect on this, he just recently passed away. And his work on the High Line he was already well known, but this kind of put him into another level. You have James Corner, who was the landscape architect lead on this, and the world-renowned Dutch garden designer, Piet Oudolf, who came in with his wonderful sense of naturalistic plantings. So just this map kind of situates you. I always like to know where I am when I'm dealing with something. So you see the green line is the park itself. And then the gray is, oops, I guess you have to hold it. The gray is the Hudson River, and all these docks here are the wharfs, or where ships would have come in. And up to the north is where the Hudson Yards at the north, and the Gansford Street in the meatpacking district in the south. And all along there are, you notice various elevators, ways for materials to come up and down, because you've got to go 30 feet up and 30 feet down to bring in a lot of your material. So how did this come to be a High Line in the first place? So it was, and I think Rob has probably described this to you in great detail, but it was originally, the High Line was was originally a land level railroad that came in, and it was bringing goods into New York City. That's where the food was coming from the Midwest, coming in and being delivered to the various factories, the meat packing plants. It was a huge area for meat packing. And this is the one remaining company left that's still actively dealing with meat. The Nabisco, National Biscuit Company, was here, and we'll see pictures of that later. And so all this food was coming in along the lower west side of Manhattan, and it was coming in on rail cars. But these rail cars were very dangerous. They were killing people. So many people died. At one point, they tried to prevent the deaths by having cowboys ride in front of the trains, but people were still dying. So they decided to build a high line, an elevated rail line, so that people would be safe. And so hence that got built in the 1930s. Well, transportation being what it is, trains kind of ran their course by about mid-century. So in the 1960s and 1970s, they were overtaken by truck traffic. The trains were starting not to be used so much. And by 1980, the last train came in on the High Line, delivering a load of turkeys, Christmas or Thanksgiving. And so the High Line kind of fell into disuse. And there it was, started to grow wildflowers. All the seeds that just kind of were there in the soil kind of started to come back. And you had this quite interesting looking area well, there were two different approaches to it. The property developers at the time thought this was an eyesore and they wanted it taken down because then they could build their buildings and make a lot of money off of it. And they actually convinced Rudolph Giuliani to sign a demolition order. And that was what was going to happen. And a couple of activists by the name of Joshua David and Robert Hammond, they thought differently. They thought, you know, we have an opportunity here. We could do something else. And they got a lot of community support around them, people who were interested in seeing something different happen. So in this very creative approach, they hired somebody to take photographs of the area. They mounted those photographs in Grand Central Station, and then they solicited entries to what could be done with this area. They got some interesting responses. Some people suggested, let's build a mile-long swimming pool. Somebody else said, what about a roller coaster? Well, garden won out, as you can see. And the mayor, the new mayor at the time that had come in, the incoming mayor, Michael Bloomberg, he rescinded the demolition order and things were set into place for the High Line to start to develop in this different way. So this was in 1999 that things turned around. And as you can see, 10 years later was when the first leg of the garden was actually built. It's a lot of work to get this going. And they assembled a world-class team of people to do it. But this wild vision here, the new vision kind of really took shape from the wild that they had seen and experienced from the self-seeded landscape. So keeping it wild was the first principle that Pete Odolph, the garden designer, wanted to enshrine in the park. And this little area here that you see, it's just called a spur preserve. It's actually just designed to show you what the original would have looked like. But of course, it's still being tended to by gardeners because it's still work to kind of keep it looking natural. Pete Odolph said that his biggest inspiration is nature. I do not want to copy it, but to recreate the emotions of and have it looking good throughout the year. So the idea was that they would keep this sense of the self-seeded landscape available for you to see, but it was really a naturalistic design that was going to appeal to your emotions as you walked through. So we'll start by looking at the garden zones, which play a huge role in shaping your moods and dealing, as I said, with the ecosystems, the microclimates as you walk through the sunny, shady, drier, colder areas. So my sister and I started from the south end, and so I'm kind of walking you up from the south end, which is a woodland area. And you see these birch trees here are just they're just such a nice, slender, small tree that seems to work extremely well with the landscape here. And nice white trunks and allowing some dappled sunlight in. The woodland edge also has blue giant hyssop, and there are low-lying ferns and serviceberry trees in this opening area. You can see the train tracks on the edge there. It's a very, not subtle, but varied use of the rail lines you'll see. Here is an area called the grasslands. It's open area, lots of sunshine, and it's prairie grasses interspersed with forbs or the perennials, which was another of Pete Odolph's ideas, that you have these forbs, these taller plants that come up and make a statement within the overall grassy area. Now it looks, I do admit, this looks a little dull here, a little brown and kind of like, okay. But you know, it really, even though it was September, there were so many compensations and so much beautiful color. For instance, this Gibraltar bush clover was just stunning. There was some on either side of the path at one point, and all kinds of asters, you know, the fall asters. I don't know, about a dozen different species in the garden, and this beautiful little poppy mallow, which has lovely pop of color there. This is all part of the grasslandy area. And I can't resist this picture because I love the backlit glow here, and that you've got the echinacea that's past its best, but it still looks really good, like Pete Odolph wanted, you know, despite the season, for it to look great. Now come to an area that's probably the closest you're going to get to a beach here at the park. These are these fabulous wooden sun chairs. And I got this picture early in the morning, which is why there's nobody on it, but they fill up and they're very popular. And you just sort of feel like a movie star like in them. And it's in this area that also has a water feature. So if you notice, you have the chairs on the side here. At the time we were there was this climate science fair taking place. So that's why there were booths set up there. But underneath the booths, there is a water feature. It's like a little, well, they call it a fountain. But people can, in the summer, can walk in it with their bare feet, but it also feeds the animals too. And so birds and insects have a water source they can easily come to. And the plants have a lovely source of water too. So they focus on some of those plants that really like the water, like rose mallow and swamp milkweed and groundsel bush. Oops, sorry. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Dear. Okay. So you see, those are the deck chairs there. And then this part, I love that too, that shape. Because what does it remind you of? Looks like a boat, eh? So, you're going into an area that has water and they've got this boat-like shape that kind of divides, and the one area can go over here and the other takes you in another direction. And then you come out of your beach and your reclining area and into an area called the Chelsea Thicket. And this is kind of like a magical place. And the fall, the colors were just so bright and colorful, these yellows. And I think this is called Summer Sweet. Yeah, oh no, sorry. That yellow shrub is called sweet shrub. And then there were also other plants like summer sweet, which is, even though it bloomed in July, it still had rather attractive foliage and little flowers blooming there. Past the thicket was a sweep of an area referred to as the Meadow Walk. And you start to see more of the city kind of coming into it, like with the more modern skyscrapers in the background and lovely open areas. Then you get to another fun place, which is called the flyover. And the flyover takes you up about 8 feet. You're about 8 feet up above the garden, so the beds, and so you get to look down onto the gardens and you look up into the trees. This is an area that has a lot of magnolia trees and like 2 different types of magnolia trees and a tulip tree. So you could probably get the sense you're not just walking up a straight path here. It's so varied that you don't even really think you're always in the same place. It's just so much variety. This area, the prairie, had just been developed when we were there. So I think that was the first year that it was really in full bloom. It was completely planted from seeds. So it's kind of inspiring that way to think they did this all from seed, this particular garden here. And in the little sign that's over there to the left, they describe the process by which they had success doing it. So they mowed it a lot the first year to keep down the weeds and the weed seed, but to enable the roots of the perennials to get really strong. And then just had this burst of color in September. We were there. And this is a wildflower field. And I don't know if this picture conveys the absolute charm of this little vista here, but you have a false indigo tree there. And then underneath you have asters and lead plants. Just kind of created like a fairy-like sort of setting. Just delightful. And then we're getting towards the northern end of the park now, and these called radial plantings. So it's much more of a slightly curved but open path. And the plantings on the side here are very much in the matrix style that Pete Odo favored. We're repeating plantings of different species of plants that that would bloom at different times. And there's Yeah, yeah, and you get reflections of things in the buildings that are surrounding it. So in addition to the garden zones, which provide a lot of interest with their variety and spending most of your time looking at it, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the design features that are in this as well, because I know it sort of helped me to understand a little bit more and maybe think, oh, maybe I could integrate some of these things in my own garden. They want to, how do you produce flow? How do you produce cohesion? So it all kind of feels like it works together, even though you've got 16 different zones and you've got all this stuff happening around you too. Harmony, you want it to work together, and interest. So the first thing you've probably thought of, if you have a straight path and you want to kind of do something with it, you break it up using out of an S bend and 45-degree angles on the, see how the plantings extend out there. And so you've got a little bit of interest going on in like that. You have proportional planting heights. So some are 30 centimeters or 1 feet, and a long kind of row of a foot long, and then a row behind it that's twice as high. So it's proportional, and yet there's a harmonious flow to it going on there. Of course, the main theme running through the entire park is that whole idea of the railway track, the original railway track. So this was really used as, and it really functions as, the unifying visual theme. So it is something that takes you through the entire park, but not in such a way that it's boring or repetitive or just kind of like, okay, we get it. It's just so, it's used in so many different ways that indicate, you know, and remind you of it. This is going through the Nabisco plant, actually. So we're just kind of, it's divided, but you can see where the tracks are there. And then you have these parallel lines. The idea of the track is echoed in a lot of other ways through the park. So you've got these on the left there, you see the planting channels, and they're just kind of like carved into the concrete, and with plants growing up. And then over here you have elevated seating that is, even like this part kind of echoes the lines, and so does the fact that it's elevated, and you've got an elevated anyway. It's just like wow, those architects had a lot of fun. They're very creative people. So it's really, that's just one of the exciting parts of the, but even the trees, even the way they have the trees planted in pairs like that sometimes, not always, but you get the idea. These two skinny trees side by side. So another feature is, of course, you're working with New York City. You've got some great views to frame. And what I particularly like about this vista is how it captures so many different types of things. So you've got the garden, you've got the kind of, you know, mostly the plants are fading, but you've got them in the foreground. Then you have other buildings down here, larger buildings there. You've got a big billboard, and in the background, of course, the Empire State Building. And it's just like, yeah, this is just what you see. It can't help but, well, filled my heart anyways to see that. Another great statue, of course, is the Statue of Liberty. And in fact, it is visible, but you practically need a magnifier to see. So my sister took this picture and then magnified, and most people miss it. Like, it's really so impossible to see, but it is actually there. So, I mean, you know, Why not? It's also like they also set it up as a place where people could really come, community could come and hang out and attend a little concert, listen to music. In this case, it was the climate forum that was happening. And so there were little talks that were set up and taking place while we were there. So I don't know if you can see the, oh, no, I won't bother. So this is an art piece that was in that meadow that I showed you that picture before. It's called The Wind Blows Where It Wishes. And it was just a glorious piece of art. So beautiful that I thought, why can't you just always be here? You look like you belong. But they commission new pieces every year, like 30 pieces of art. 30 artists get commissioned to provide artwork for the park, which is just a wonderful way for them to be showcased and for the park to be enhanced. And so everything that I saw, I actually took out a couple of these pictures because I thought, well, why do you want to see things you can't, it won't be there now. But you know, it's always an adventure. So the property developers who once thought that they were, you know, really hard done by having the High Line, they are now like, it's the hottest real estate market, one of the hottest real estate markets in town. So as you can see, you know, that poster over there, that's what it's saying. Think the High Line is cool. Check out our roof deck. It's not a very nice looking building, but it's got $1 million view. It's actually probably one of the drawbacks of the High Line, that with all the money poured into developing it and all the attention that it has sought or brought to the area, that it's kind of priced a lot of the original inhabitants out of the market. As you know, what happens when areas get gentrified, which is unfortunate. But it does indicate to you what being creative in this way can bring to an area. In fact, in 4 years, in the first 4 years of the High Line's existence, the city estimated, and keep in mind, it cost about $150 million to build, the capital cost, the initial. But in those first 4 years, the city estimated that it had in revenues $1 billion. So it's like in that short period of time, they'd already more than, you know, 6 times recouped their money. There's also a lot of very cool architecture around. I understand that this Bloomberg shed was once considered controversial, but it's pretty, it was pretty neat when you're walking up there just to see this structure that's been built. And of course, lots of new buildings. This one is proudly promoted as woman designed. It's just, it gives you a very small idea of the window and the proximity to the gardens in the High Line. So I wanted also briefly to talk about some of the practices and challenges of working in the High Line. And in addition to keeping it wild, the other key principles were keep it quiet, keep it clean, keep it slow. So no dogs allowed, no music, no drinking. This is a quiet, this is a place to be enjoyed as much like nature as you can be in the city. And it does seem to be working without a lot of really in-your-face signs about it all. Like there's no policemen around kind of telling you this or that. You know, people have just, they've gotten with the program. Of course, the staff, just unsung heroes. Well, I think they do get eulogized, or they do get sung too, but they are a tremendous force in keeping this park what it is, keeping it clean, keeping it, dealing with, you know, all the people that come through and so on. They just, and of course, weeding as need be, trimming, doing everything that they need to do. Okay, so it's March. It's March now. It's March down there. They are, if they haven't already, they're about to engage in their spring cutback, because this is when they do it. As you probably know, there's no need to do any cutting back in the fall anymore. In fact, everything benefits from having those plants left, and that's exactly what the Highline does. It leaves all of its plant material to be there over the winter. And then in March, they've chosen March because the spring plants are coming up and they want to give them a chance to thrive. They say it's a balancing act between, you know, supporting the bees and allowing the flowers to grow. We might leave it a little longer. Certainly they're in a warmer zone than we are, but that's the balancing act. But they're in there and they cut it all by hand. So there are no power tools used. And they get about 200 volunteers, including their staff, like their office staff get to come out and help, and other people. So it's looks like a pretty fun time. And they also work hard to, this is a quote directly from the website, they work hard to support insect and plant interactions. And here you see a woman, she's in there with almost precision tool, being careful to work around any insect populations that they know where, say, the Luna moth caterpillar might like be emerging from. And so they're very careful to respect those plants that way. On the note of insects in general, they said that they initially brought in predatory insects like lacewings and native ladybugs to help with the insect pests, but they've now found that the predator populations have grown to equilibrium with the prey, and so importing these insects is no longer necessary. And no pesticides or chemicals are used in the park. So here's a picture my sister took of all these milkweed bugs, and you know, we might be tempted to think, uh-oh, what's going on there? But in fact, these are considered beneficial insects because they help to keep the population of the milkweed, which, as you know, common milkweed is very invasive. They help to keep it in check. So it's just, you know, they've got a highly evolved sense of the insects and the plant life working well together here. But now we have the situation of like 18 inches of soil. Is our bur oak tree going to be able to survive? I don't know. Like, we know they have very deep tap roots. And this is probably about 13, 14 years old by this point. So I asked one of the staff members who was working in the gardens, and he said, well, it's an experiment. We'll just see. So one thing Joe, the guy I was speaking to, did not like was the stone mulch that they use. So they kept the ballast from the train tracks and they've been using it as mulch, but it's really a pain. It's also embedded in the concrete, if you happen to notice that. And they've got some ailing magnolias in that flyover area that I said was so nice to look at. I mean, they're obviously glorious in the spring, but the staff is pretty worried about the browning and dying off of the leaves. So again, these are just things that, you know, every gardener has to deal with, but they've got quite a novel ecosystem there, a novel set of circumstances. So it's a little bit different, and they'll see, but I'm sure they'll figure out a way around it. Oh, I was going to mention too, that with the cutback that you have in March, all of that material is taken down and shipped off to a facility that composts it, and the compost is returned to the garden and put on there. Just to take a quick look at the native plants. I know we've seen some already, but there were some that I just particularly liked. This brome-like sedge, it just really had the effect of softening the hardscape there, and the angular lines. It kind of made them less harsh looking, and it also does a lot to suppress weeds. So I thought, wow, this is maybe a ground cover I'd like to look into. See, and the sassafras tree. Well, I mean, okay, who doesn't love the name sassafras? And look at those leaves, like they're just so, they look like another world. I guess because we don't have them around here, but I just really find them kind of fun and interesting. And used to, I don't know whether it was reading Mark Twain or other things, when they would talk about, kids would talk about drinking sarsaparilla. And I never knew what that was, because, you know, the closest thing I could think of was Coke or I guess root beer. But in fact, and you probably know this, I didn't, that it's this is called saffrole. And it smells like a combination of star anise, cinnamon, citrus, and vanilla that comes from the oil in the bark surrounding the roots of the sassafras tree. And I think, you know, like, I guess it's a long history of use by Indigenous people. They discovered this, but it boggles my mind to think, how did you ever figure out the bark of the roots was? But I guess the smell of it was enough to entice them. It's also the key ingredient, was a key ingredient used in root beer for a long time, hence the name root beer. But unfortunately, it's found to be carcinogenic, so the use has had to be discontinued. But the birds still like the berries, and the spice bush swallowtail butterfly likes it. And then the tulip tree, which, you know, those almost look like chains of jewels with these exotic looking leaves that hang off, and makes me kind of yearn for the Carolinian forest of Southern Ontario, where tulip trees grow and have these beautiful yellow flowers on them. And then there's the bottle bush buckeye, which kind of looks like a little chestnut tree and doesn't get very big. I think it's naturalized. It's not necessarily native in New York City, but naturalized and can be grown in Southern Ontario. So the flower clusters are long, white, and fluffy. They first emerge in July and are still appealing in September. So most of these, when I say native, most of them are native to New York, but some more in broader areas, some like more southerly. And some of them we recognize as we also have them native in Ontario. Clustered mountain mint was a new one for me. I know we have some mountain mints in Ontario, Hoary mountain mint and Virginia mountain mint. But these I just really wasn't familiar with seeing, so I enjoyed seeing them, and they provided some real interest in the fall landscape. And they kind of look like Edelweiss leaves to me, Edelweiss flowers. And maybe you recognize showing goldenrod. I had to include that because I have the exact same stuff at home, and it was blooming. It's like, yes, I know you, you're my friend, and here you are. So bright, beautiful pop of color there. And the Joe Pye weed, like I mean, I think that guy must be at least 6 feet tall. And you see how enormous that Joe Pyeweed is. It just like beautiful, healthy plants in this garden. So here we are, just about back to the beginning again, and I'll show you from the sidewalk view, the American wisteria and the Japanese hydrangea vines cascading over, just accentuating the beauty of the park. And there is the very end of the bridge here of the High Line. It does actually continue over here in this building. There's a little bit. My sister and I didn't get into it, but Rob was saying, I think he may have been into it. Anyway, it's just pretty amazing. And they have rebuilt the Whitney Museum of American Art. Was fairly recently rebuilt, and it's right next door where those posts are. So you've got lots to see and do around this area. And we are very nearly at the end. So, but I think if you don't mind, if you just indulge me a little bit more, because I'd like to share with you just a tiny bit more, but beyond the High Line itself. And then I'll come back to any questions you might have. The High Line certainly worked wonders to promote the idea of planting gardens on elevated rail beds, but it wasn't the first one. The first one was in Paris. And at the same time as it was being developed, ideas were happening in Ontario for a first elevated rail line garden in Ontario, in Canada too. So I just wanted to share those with you briefly. The La Coulée Verte in Paris was built in 1993. You enter it through the Bastille, and it's about 5 kilometers long. So it's almost twice as long as the High Line. It has very exquisite, lush kind of greenery and so on. But it doesn't have the same degree of architectural design that the High Line does. And the rails are out of there too. So if you happen to go to Europe and in Paris, you might want to check it out. Also just wanted to say a little bit about the St. Thomas Elevated Park. St. Thomas, if any of you are from Southern Ontario, you probably know where it is. It's south of London and fairly close to where my sister lives in Windsor. So she, in fact, has been to it. She took these photos and they started working on their park in 2012 and were in fact unaware of the High Line at that point. But they, an individual, you talk about inspiration, there's one man who got the idea that wouldn't it be cool to do something with this bridge? So this bridge that you see here is in fact 400, it's almost half a kilometer long. And it's about 3 times as high as the High Line. It's about 95 to 100 feet high. And, you know, it's quite extraordinary. You can see on the right, this is the bridge itself. And there was talk about demolishing it. There was talk about, it was kind of going nowhere fast, when this guy got the idea that, you know, really something could be done here. And so he got together a team, a nonprofit called On Track St. Thomas, and they worked on developing this elevated park that opened in 2019. And you know, you can kind of get a sense from these pictures. It's very different from the High Line, from a wealthy city that's got, you know, beautiful architectural design and stuff going on in it. But this is a community that has pulled together. We've got art, you've got native plants. They were very keen that this was all going to be native plants, even though they got pushed back on that. And they have worked to pull out the invasives all along here. The rails aren't there, but they've been taken out. But there are, well, not but, it's dogs and cyclists are allowed, so you're allowed to go on there. It's more like a trail. And at the western edge of this bridge here, it connects with the Trans-Canada Trail. And they are hoping, in fact, the founders would really like to see it make a connect to Windsor, in fact, with a greenway. So I just thought, well, that's pretty neat, you know, like, and this is a Canadian thing that we have that we can be justly proud of. In fact, the bridge was first built in 1870, and it's developed. It's had some reincarnations along the way, but St. Thomas was actually once known as the railway capital of Canada, which I did not know. All right, so back we go. Questions, comments? Yes.
So I love the way you ended, because I like to plant the seed of an idea, pun intended.
Because what?
I'd like to plant the seed of an idea, pun intended,
Mhm.
that actually the pathway that's now across the Prince of Wales, I think it's also called the Commanda Bridge. I was really hoping it was going to be a smaller version of the High Line. I think it's a really lost opportunity. We have this vision that they did in New York, and I think we could do something much more interesting with the two railway bridges and the piece of land that's on Lemieux Island. Has fabulous views of the Chaudière and the Parliament and downtown and the river. We could make so much more of it than just a bike path. And I've always thought of the High Line as an inspiration for what they could do there. And maybe we're the groups of people could offer that kind of inspiration to the city. You know, the bike people have had their go at it as a bike path, but to naturalize it and make it a people place, maybe we're the ones to put forward that kind of vision. And I love the High Line. I went very early days when it was very industrial, and you're right, now I went back a few years ago and it's all fancy real estate. The other thing I would recommend people do is to go along. In your first map, you showed the piers on the Hudson River, and they've all been converted to park spaces. Some of them are tennis courts, and there's also a green space connecting them all. So it's fabulous to start down in the 30 avenues, I think, and walk up and then get up onto the High Line. It's a really creative use of old industrial structures to create parkland in the city. So I highly recommend that as well.
Rebecca? Oh. Rebecca.
Thanks, Rob. Wonderful presentation, Mary. This was the second time I've seen it. Just as good as the first time. Oh. Was I too close? I was probably too close to the speaker. Yeah, sorry about that. I was struck by your mention of the gravel mulch that was from the original rail bed. Were there any contamination concerns around that?
Well, that's a very good question. Perhaps they figured that after all this time with the rain and that was fine. But you bringing that up, it did make me think about St. Thomas, because for 150 years there were chemicals thrown down beside the track to keep down the weeds. So they had a lot of trouble kind of restoring that. I mean, nature does have a way of restoring it, but he didn't mention that. The guy I talked to didn't mention a contamination factor. He just, for him, it was simply, you know, like working with stone, like it's digs under but it's a good point. Yeah, the railways aren't particularly friendly to their environment. Sure. Yes.
Okay, so I was wondering what the hours of the that it's open, like you go in the south end and.
I think it's 8 in the morning, I think, till 8 at night.
Okay, so it is closed.
Yes, it is closed.
So, okay, and the second thing is there anything, I've been once.
Maybe
years
10
ago,
at night. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, we didn't go at night.
Any place you can get something to drink or something to eat, or they tend to stay away from that, any kind of commercial.
Sorry?
Are you able to get anything to eat up there, to drink when you're
Oh,
up there?
not right
Anything at
on
all?
not right on the trail itself,
Yeah.
but there's lots of restaurants
Yeah,
at the beginning and at the end. And it's really, it's a mile and a half. It's not that long
Right.
either way.
Yeah.
So, and you know, I didn't even really see any like refuse containers or anything, like it was clean.
Yeah.
So, you know, people were respecting it.
Mhm.
Maybe, the Nabisco place, yes, I think that was a place you could get something to eat. You know, where I said
Yeah,
the
I
beach.
just wondered because
beach
New York
fairs?
it's obviously a very densely populated area. So you'd wonder if people maybe would want to have a little nap up there overnight, or, you know what I mean? Like they close it off from what, 8?
Yeah,
6.
well, you know, there's the Chelsea market.
Yeah.
It's a very upscale
Yeah.
market area, and it's just kind of abuts it, like it runs up
Yeah.
to it, and elevators come down, and you've got it, like it's right there. It's just not on the pathway itself.
And then one quick question about that tree, that bur oak, the bur oak. So I missed what you said about the 18 inches of soil. Like, how did do they add anything? Is it a raised bed at all around that oak, or is it just?
No, it's 18 inches of soil.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah, yeah, I know. It's not much.
Well, good on that oak.
That. Is there somebody back there? No? Okay.
Thank you so much, Mary. I almost felt the wind in my hair, and I could almost hear the bugs in the plants. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for bringing us on this journey. I think we needed this after the long winter introduction to gardening again. So on behalf of all of us, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And
Claire. Thank you very much.
we really enjoyed it.